Welcome back to Music Theory Logic. Andrew here, and today is going to be another music theory breakdown where I do my best to recreate popular songs so that I can try to show you some music theory and make understanding the music theory side of stuff a little bit easier. And today we're going to be talking about Renegade from Jay-Z featuring Eminem. Shout out to WebZH, subscriber for the request. Let's go ahead into the session. So if you haven't seen one of these before, I am not using any of the original audio. I have recreated all of this by ear. I believe all of the notes are correct. The sound selection is not perfect. The mix is not as good as the original, but I really focus on getting the notes right. I don't own the rights to this song, so I want to make it sound as good as I can with the amount of time that makes sense for these kind of videos. So anyway, thanks again to WebZH for the request. If you have any songs you'd like to see me break down, let me know in the comments. And without further ado, here it is. Cool. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Thought it was good enough to keep watching. So we're going to talk about some music theory. If you find this stuff helpful, you would help me out a lot by subscribing to the channel, share it to social media, tell your friends. So this song I originally was going to analyze as being in the key of C# minor, but doesn't have a lot of the C# minor chord. And so the crazy thing about music theory is it's not really a tool that you should or really want to use as your primary way to write music, but it is a great way to understand things in music that you like and perhaps pick out things that are ideas that you can use as a composer in music that you're really writing with your ear, because ultimately you should really use and work on your ear to write the best music you can. So this is not in the key of C# minor. This is in the key of F# Dorian. And another opportunity to talk about the modes. I had the same thing with the last video, Travis Scott, Stop Trying to Be God. So the Dorian mode is, the simplest way to understand it is if you play D to D on the piano, just white keys, that will be your Dorian scale. If you compare that with a minor scale, D minor has a note B flat. That note is the 6th scale degree. So the Dorian has all the same notes as D minor. The only difference is that that B flat is a B natural. So we would say that it's a natural minor scale with a raised 6th scale degree. It sounds like this. In the key of F#. That's basically all the same notes that we have in E major. So we'll have F#, C#, G#, and D#. It sounds like this. Cool. And then the main chord that we find is on the choir, and that's going to be an F# minor chord. That is a 1 in F# Dorian or F# minor. Cool. So let's go talk about the individual layers. So I guess I'll knock out the piano intro. The intro is really cool. That's the part of the song I was the most sort of I knew I hadn't gotten as perfect as the rest. So I think I got the notes right. The hard part about this is that the tempo is super fluid. So if we look at the actual tempo, you'll see over here that I have it slowing down. It starts at like 76 beats per minute, slows to 60, and then speeds up. So that was trying to recreate the feel of that part, but it sounds like this. All right, so this right here, we see A's, C sharp, G sharp, C sharp. So this is kind of like either a suspended harmony of the F sharp minor chord, like a sus2, or a minor ninth. Could analyze this a bunch of different ways. Then we go to G sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C natural. That right there is kind of like a chromatic passing note. That kind of makes it feel like it's C sharp harmonic minor, but we don't really find that later. So then we go to an F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, E. So this is like an F sharp minor 7, and then right here, G sharp, C sharp, E. That's a minor 5 chord in the key of F sharp Dorian. Arpeggio walking up. Down here, this is the piano sustain pedal MIDI automation. I've done videos on this, but if you're using virtual pianos, figuring out how to write in sustain is super helpful. So the next thing we hear on top are our strings. I have multiple strings going on here. In the intro, we just get A down to a G sharp, and that G sharp is held out for the rest of it. Then when we come to the main section of the song, the strings on their own sound like this. All right, you hear some filtering happening. I noticed from listening to the original that it feels like you notice the strings the most at the on the first measure, and then you can still tell they're strings, but they're softer in the mix, so it sounds like they're rolling off some of the high end. So note-wise, we got A, G sharp, F sharp, E. So from our scale, our third note, second note, first note, seventh note. Should note all of these would be the same in natural minor because we're not using the 6th scale degree. Then we go down to the 5th note, so C sharp, down to third note, A, second note, G sharp, back to A. All right, let's add in our bass. So our bass with those strings sounds like this. All right, so this right here, the bass line, it's basically like an F sharp minor 7th arpeggio, or not really. We're just getting F sharp up to E. That's a minor 7th. Then we're going to C sharp. That's the 5th in that F sharp minor chord. And then we go to the 6th. That note right there, this D sharp, is really the note that tells us that we're not in F sharp minor. We find that in a bunch of different layers, but again, we explain that from being in Dorian. It's the raised 6th scale degree. So then that phrase sort of repeats. Different fill, it's going a bend or a slide up to E, then to D sharp. So that is our 7 raised 6th scale degree. And I know that how I got that isn't perfect, but I'm basically using like the portamento of a synth and some MIDI to try to fake that sort of attack from below sound. Third time it repeats the same thing we get in the beginning. Repeats it again. Then our final ending, we're going B down to E. All right, so that to our ears kind of sounds like we're on some sort of E harmony here, which could be a major 7. From our Dorian scale, I will say, like in a general theory thing, we don't find a ton of chords in the song, but when we're talking about chords, it's really the combination of notes. So like even though this violin is on its own, it might be happening at the same time as another note, so our ears will perceive it like it's a chord. So what have I not added in? I think that's everything minus the choir. All right, so choir's down here. It's MIDI that I bounced. It's basically playing that one chord I showed you, F sharp, A, C sharp together. Only happens at the first of every 4 measures, but really important layer. That added in sounds like this. All right, cool. Let's talk drums. So I have 2 different layers of drums going, but it's essentially the same channel, especially once we get going. I've got these synth drums and I've got this live drums. If we look at the MIDI that's going on here, we are at 85 beats per minute. We have a standard backbeat. Halftime would be really slow at this speed, so standard backbeat means that the snare is happening on beat 2 and beat 4. Kick drum is happening on beat 1. Then on the 4th 16th note, happens on the 4th 16th note, the next measure. This like sort of ride sound that I've got going, or like ride bell, is happening on the 2nd 8th note. And then it happens at the same time with the kick drum. And it happens the same spot where the kick drum would have hit. All right, so this rhythm right here is really kind of an important theme rhythmically to this instrumental. And one important part about it is it's back in time. So it's slightly out. It's kind of like a sort of swing, and it gives the whole track like a little bit more cool groove to it. So definitely try doing that. But one thing that's important to remember is if you like move your drums back and all of a sudden some other instrument is hitting in time, that's going to sound wrong to our ears. So you don't have to put all your stuff to the grid. You can rather, if your drums are out of the grid, you can make sure that like you're either playing with your drums or you're moving MIDI so that it goes with the same notes outside of the grid. Cool. So all that sounds like this. All right, then we start to hear this piano melody that comes in. It's really subtle. We don't hear it a bunch. It's going A, F sharp. That's like a 1. It's going G sharp, E. That's kind of like the 7, major 7. Then it's going F sharp, D sharp. That's a cool minor interval. And again, there's that D sharp. We find it. Once again, that note's not in the key of F sharp minor, and that's what tells us this is the Dorian mode. And then ED sharp. That sounds like this. All right, so the drums and the this melody are on like a 2 measure cycle, so the pattern repeating every 2 measures. Is that correct for my drums? Yes. The violins, however, are on a 4-bar sequence, so they start changing notes the second half. Kind of makes it more interesting. All right, so the final, I guess, 2 layers to talk about. When Eminem's verse is happening, we hear this vocal synth. It's doing the notes E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Now, important to note, F sharp Dorian has the exact same notes as E major. The reason I don't call this song in the key of E major is because we don't find an E major chord, and we find that F sharp minor more often than any other harmony. So that pickup sounds like this on the vocal synth. Cool. Again, a subtle layer that we find during Eminem's verse. We get it a second time, and then we get this cool, it sounds like a Thurman. Thurman is one of those like super old synths where it's like 2 poles and one is pitch and one is volume. I think that's right. But look it up, a Thurman. I do not have one, so this is an Arturia recreation somewhat. The notes are going A, G sharp, all solo, just this channel, called Thurman type. So pretty chaotic, kind of a cool layer lower in the mix. Again, the notes A, G sharp, F sharp, A, G sharp. So 3, 2, 1, 3, 2. And then we're going down to our raised 6. So we find that same note again, tells us we're in the Dorian mode. And then down to our 5, C sharp. That with our music sounds like this. So there it is. Let me know if you have any questions. This song, like Stop Trying to Be God, really shows us that one, there's some modes that are really similar to writing in minor keys. So we talked about Dorian today. It's a minor scale. It's just a raised 6 scale degree. And then we talked about Phrygian for Stop Trying to Be God, and that's basically a minor scale where the second is the only note changed, and it's lower. So Dorian 6 raised, Phrygian 2nd lowered. But again, when we're writing beats like this or instrumentals that don't have tons of different notes, like if we have a minor chord and then we use one of those other notes, flat 2 or the raised 6, we've essentially put our instrumental into that mode. If you find this helpful, you'd help me a lot by subscribing to the channel. Thank you for hanging out with me. Let me know if you have any songs you'd like to see me break down, and I will see you next time. Cheers.